This is an introduction to DPI's AT resource guide. And linked with this here is a Padlet. So you'll see on the bottom here, there's a link to a Padlet. It is also in the chat. That will provide us with information and an opportunity for you all to give feedback on the AT guidance. This is still very much a work in progress, so we appreciate feedback, questions. Nothing is everything. I mean, everything is okay for you to ask or share. So please do put information and questions and feedback in there so we can move it forward. All right. So I am Anna Cliff. I have a background in assistive technology. I am working and helping to coordinate and support with the AT resource guide for CISA 2 and the Department of Public Instruction. I'm a constant learner of assistive technology. I work in the Madison schools as a program support teacher and a lead for assistive technology. I also do some consulting on the side, and I am just constantly wanting to continue to grow my knowledge of this. So even though I'm helping to coordinate and support with this resource guide, there are many people that I want to make sure we acknowledge and give some credit to with helping create this. So today our objectives are really getting a sneak peek of the 6 main sections that we have of the AT resource guide. And as we're doing this, please, please, please use that Padlet and provide feedback or give questions. I'm really not going to give you every single resource that's in here right now, but I will give you kind of the snapshot of what's happening in each of those sections. If there's an area you think we're missing, definitely please note that. Even if we have it and we just maybe didn't share it today, it's still good for us to always be doing those double checks. I also want to make sure that before we end this, I do want to share that there's a lot of recognition and acknowledgement of others that have contributed to this resource. This is not just a one and done resource. There's a lot of people who have been supporting this. And then I will talk a little bit about the proposed next steps, including some additional ideas about micro-credentialing, some of this resource guide in conjunction with a lot of the resources that are out there to really give a comprehensive tool to support educators and staff and professionals around the state with understanding it with assistive technology. All right, before I begin, I think it's always really important to understand some of the rich history of assistive technology in Wisconsin. We are so fortunate in Wisconsin because we do have this rich history. We have a lot of buy-in and a lot of just a lot of people who have been very dedicated to assistive technology for so long. So WADI was developed in 1993 in response to the needs of school districts around the state. And WADI, if you're not familiar, is called the Wisconsin Assistive Technology Initiative. And their goal was really to be those statewide leaders and provide training in assistive technology. However, that funding ended in 2008, 2009. But if you notice, there's actually, I think, even a few people in this meeting here. But there's a lot of key players of this resource that are still contributing significantly to the field. So it is very, I feel very honored in Wisconsin to be a part of keeping this tradition of really strong assistive technology going. I think we are great leaders in the field, and keeping that going with a lot of the rich history we have is so important. And right now there are a lot of updates, or there's a lot of information on the WADI website that's done and updated on a volunteer basis. So really the goal is to take some of this history and some of this really solid and really good information and helping to translate that into a usable format to house it kind of on that DPI side of it, so it's accessible for all. So again, I just talked a little bit about this, but that's the purpose of this guide is really to provide a comprehensive collection of assistive technology tools, services, and resources, not only for professionals, but also for families and individuals or users of assistive technology. And we're hoping that by sharing these resources and information in a kind of a one-stop shop, we're hoping that it can help individuals and people access quality and meaningful assistive technology devices and services within school, home, and community settings. All right, so here are the 6 main sections that we looked at. A lot of the resources that are out there, looked at WADI, have been doing a lot of digging and a lot of research all over. And we kind of have these categories that we've fit things under that are really those tools. And so one of them being the introduction to the basics of assistive technology assessment, IEP documentation, how to implement AT, so AT implementation, acquiring assistive technology. How do you go about getting technology at your fingertips to use with a consumer or with an individual or a student? And then additional resources for assistive technology that are out there. And that could be anything from a different assistive technology groups or community meetings or different library resources, etc. So this section 1 is really that intro to assistive technology. And I'm not going to go through all this because Kathy kind of talked a lot about this intro of what are the devices and what are the services. So going through that introduction of what really is assistive technology, why should it be and why is it important and what is the purpose of it? And in our introduction to assistive technology in this guidance resource, we want to make sure that those resources that have already been developed that are really valuable are available in a one-stop shop, right? If we're going to talk about the intros to AT, there's also monthly updates. How can we figure out what's going on right now with AT in our state? Also DPI bulletins. I know that we have some updates with the DPI bulletins and keeping those all on one spot as well. So that introduction to AT really is just that getting your feet wet on what assistive technology is. So this section 2 is the assistive technology assessment. So we really get into how do you even plan for an assistive technology assessment? Who can be involved in the process? Really thinking about that team effort, it not being one person on a team to support the assistive technology assessment piece. How do you collect data? What are the resources? What assessment tools can you use? You'll hear a lot of people talk about WADI. You'll hear a lot of people talk about SET and all these different acronyms that are out there, but really helping people understand what those all are and how we can use those. So from Quiet, there is a really awesome assessment planner, and this is just one tool. This is not by any means the only tool. If you have other tools out there that we're missing, feel free to add those in the chat or add that to the Padlet. This is one that is highly recommended of just going through this planner and making sure that you have the key people involved in getting this information. So as you see in the assistive technology assessment process planner, you're filling out a lot of information, but you're really gathering it, analyzing it, thinking about the trials, thinking about the data collection. And this is one tool. So this is one kind of tool to kind of make sure that you're just checking all the boxes of what you're doing to help support and figure out that assistive technology. Along with this, we are linking a ton of assessment tools. So we also found that instead of recreating tools, there's so much rich information that is already available. We can look at Ocali, which has a lot of videos, and we link that with a lot of the micro credentials on how to plan for assistive technology, what tools are out there, what assessments are out there. Rather than creating another tool, there's so many tools that we just need people to have their fingers on and have access to. So making sure that we're linking these really powerful resources. So using SET to plan for an assistive technology assessment. How do you do that? What does it look like? So we go through here some examples of Joy Zabala, the leader, one of the inspiring leaders and advocate for AT, created this framework. And it talks more about how do you get this resource? What can you do? How do you collect data? How do you get tools selected? So this is just another great tool that you can use. We also talked through some informal assistive technology assessments. What does it mean when it's informal? What are you doing when you're looking at something informally? You're looking at observations, you're looking at the interviews, you're looking at the environment. Another big one that we'll get to in a little bit, I'll get more into this, and I'm gonna probably pull Kathy in with some questions and some feedback as to, but really looking at the feature matching for assistive technology assessments. How do we look at different features and how can we support this? This is an area that the guidance document we're still in and we're still working on quite a bit, but that feature matching is really important with our technology assessments. Looking at learner voice and perspectives with assistive technology, how do you gather that information? Some really great tools that have already been created, student handbooks for choosing and using AT. What are good questions to help get a student involved? And then we also have assistive technology tools for transitioning students. So I'm not going to take the credit for this piece of the work. I know that Cassie Frost put a lot of really good information and details in here. We're really trying to consolidate, what does it mean when we're looking at transitioning a student, either between levels or between here and post-secondary, right? Between elementary and middle, between middle and high school to post-secondary and beyond, right? So really thinking about what needs to happen with all those little things that sometimes we don't think about: chargers, manuals, support documents, all of that information that we need to transition with students. But then also looking at how can we help transition students even beyond that. All right, and then also collecting data for assessments. So how do we gather information? Different ways to gather data, reviewing products, observation, and then again, those links to some of this work already. So you're going to see a lot of information in here that's duplicated, but we also really wanted to make sure that resources you could get to resources in multiple ways, that you're not stuck going down a rabbit hole and then that's the only way you can get to that resource. So making the resource usable and user-friendly, that you can access that all. And oh, again, I just wanted to go back to this one too. This is not an exhaustive list of all the resources we have in the guide that we've been developing, but this is just a starting point. And then we had another huge contributor to the AT considerations for non-English learners. And so when we talk about this, we really talk about how essential it is that the IEP team includes educators who have knowledge of the students' language needs and expertise in second language acquisition. And Brooke, I apologize if I don't pronounce her last name right, Gorelski Kumbajin, if I'm saying that correctly, but it's a CISA 2 language acquisition and culture consultant. And she did a lot of work with really trying to hone in on what is the AT considerations that we need to think about, and how does that impact our non-English learners, and how do we get resources for them? So she, not only has she helped create a resource and define some of this information, but she's also gave a lot of really great ideas of tools you can use to help support access with families. So looking at that homeschool communication, there's a couple tools there. I think she has about 10 listed in her resource guide that we have, and we're working to consolidate that into usable format. But then also listening and speaking, both interpretive and expressive, looking at voice recording, reading and writing, so different units for multilingual resources, looking at English and African languages, and there's other ones for other languages, but really honing in on all these different tools and other technology that could be available to help support that. Again, we talked a little bit about this feature matching resource, but we really want to get the idea of that feature matching occurs when you look systematically at what a student needs and the features of various tools or programs. So the AT resource guide is hoping to link feature matching to the 6 areas of functional and academic performance. So I want to highlight in here that one of the main contributors of this work is our very own Kathy White. So having a lot of expertise in this, she is helping really dig into that. If you are looking at those monthly updates through DPI that you receive in your email, or even on the AT Forward website, you will often see some feature matching ideas that are already linked in there. And Kathy's been starting to share those in those monthly updates. And because of that, we really wanted to take that and how can we make that information available at all times and not just a 1 month option. So this again is not an exhaustive list. This is just a snapshot, an example, but those 6 areas, looking at the academics, the cognitive learning, communication, independence and self-determination, physical and health, social and emotional learning, sticking different areas underneath there and really helping hone in on what kinds of questions or what kinds of things do we need to help figure out those features. So I'm going to give an example. For example, with reading, this is an area that Kathy has worked hard on. But what is this area of student concern for reading difficulties? Are they having accessible supports in place to assist with attending to a task? Are there visual enhancements of the task needed, or highlighting? Does a text need to be read aloud to a student? Are there accessible supports to assist with learning new vocabulary? Looking at auditory word processing that reads the words, so text to speech or speech to text. You're going to see the English language learners in here, and also combining some of that with information that Brooke shared. Helping with weak stamina for reading. How do you help a student who has weak stamina? So auto summary of the text, simplifying text. Again, having the text read aloud. So I'm not going to go through and read all of this information, but I do think it's really helpful for people to see that providing some kind of resource that really links some of these features and these questions that people have, and then giving people like direct feedback and direct ideas on what tools can be out there. Kathy, did I capture that correctly?
Anything I did, and just as a side note, one of my thoughts with this too is that, especially for like smaller districts or people who are very new to assistive tech, that you could actually print these and take them with you to your IEP meeting, and then when they ask that question, did you consider assistive technology, you can actually use it then as a checklist, and you have that documentation there. And because it's we all have our little niches where we're really good in, because like my background is a teacher, whereas others are OTs, Anna's an OT, so if you're needing that team approach. So sometimes when you go through those questions, you're like, oh, maybe the student doesn't have stamina, and it's amazing because all of these things kind of come back. Like last month we were talking to UW-Madison staff, and they were talking about the fact that their incoming freshmen were having so much difficulty with reading large amounts of text, and that was an issue for them when they were trying to get through their college courses. So it's not, it's again looking at assistive tech from our little kids all the way through, because you need it for life. So that's kind of the thought. It certainly is a work in progress. It continues to be, because we're always adding to it, but it's a good starting point for people.
Yes, and so how this exactly is going to be figured onto the website, we're really working with DPI on helping make sure this is a user-friendly access point where people can look at those 6 areas and say, okay, we have a challenge with academics, right? Or we know that the student needs this for academics and is using this, and here are some other checkpoint questions to think about and some tools that link directly to that. We've done a lot of just reviewing of the ATLC and the statewide lending center to just see how can we also link tools in there and help people know that these are kinds of tools that you could help with that feature as well. So I will be very open to sharing that feedback on the Padlet too. If people are like, hey, I have a great idea, here's something in the ATLC. And Laura, I'm not trying to call you out, but kind of am. Laura, if you have any thoughts about, the ATLC, how we can label things as far as features and helping people understand where to get some of those for different tools, happy to help link some of that a little bit more too, if we can. So always open to more ideas.
This is Laura. Sounds great, Anna. Consistent
Awesome.
language on the tool, on the naming of the devices is kind of very helpful for the search purposes.
Yeah, and I think Daniel Parker was also really talking about making sure that those 6 areas of academic and functional performance are really, because it's talked about so much on it, and it kind of goes, it obviously goes with the IEP, but because that's on our website so much for DPI, really trying to link this guidance document underneath those areas as well. And so I think it makes sense with the feature matching and the tools that we have available across the state, really trying to help people understand what tools can fit into what areas and where can they overlap, right? They can sometimes be in multiple. So, but thank you. I appreciate any feedback. So as we are going along, again, just a reminder, if you missed it, but that Padlet, I'm going to actually just bring that up real quick. But that Padlet, again, people, I see that's great. People are adding to it and I'm not ignoring it. I promise we will go through all of it and read it all afterwards. If you require a response to something, please let me know so I can definitely add that to here. But again, yes, and there's, if you scroll over there, it goes through all the 6 sections as well. And if this is not user friendly, let me know and I can help you with getting the resources too.